His question was, you know the saying, forgive and forget? Well, I recently had to forgive someone for something that hurt me more than I thought was possible. So I forgave them, but I'm having trouble forgetting that pain. So how do I let go of the pain? Rach.
I think the idea, and I can relate to that question a lot. The stuff that I've been through is with my dad, but I think there's a difference between letting go of the pain and moving past the pain.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be a scar, like, it's not, no matter how small or big the issue is. Like, obviously, if somebody says something mean to you, and if an acquaintance says something mean to you and they, like, you don't talk to them again, okay, that might sting your mind, but, like, that's still gonna change something about you in some way. But, like, with my dad and everything, you don't really forget the pain, but you fill that void with God.
That makes sense.
That's, like, the best, like, I had to
Sure.
put all the time that I was thinking about my dad and wanting my dad, or that I just wanted a hug, and just give all of that to God.
Yeah.
Just pray about it, tell him how I was feeling.
Being able to like replace your thoughts, like your negative thoughts, with more positive thoughts in a way.
Just with God in general. Even you don't even have to like do the same thing as you would like with my dad. I can't give God a hug. Like, I can't do that.
That's right.
But I can still talk to him and spend the time with him and fill that void with him. Because if you don't fill it with him, you're going to fill it with something else.
Right.
And it's not going to be
So like just properly replacing that void or whatever was lost.
Like I don't think it's not a biblical concept to forgive and to forget. That's not. The Bible says
it just rhymes. That's all.
To forget something is actually very difficult. You can't try to forget something because that's thinking about it.
I don't think you can.
Forgetting something is I think the best way to explain it is forgiveness. What forgiveness is it's literally releasing someone of a debt that you feel like they owe you. If you look at forgiveness and how God forgave us, we sinned against him, and God looked at us and said, no, I know that, but I'm going to forgive you as though you hadn't sinned. I'm going to release you from the debt that you owe me. And so that's why he obviously paid our debt on the cross. So now when God looks at us, he obviously looks at us with love, and there's hope. There's hope. I think that hope is a big thing, because when you look at forgiveness, what forgiveness does is it actually gives you hope. Now that you can forgive somebody, you can actually be a better individual. When you don't forgive, it's like drinking poison, and that's what leads to bitterness. It rots you out as an individual. And so moving forward, it's like forgiveness is a decision where you say, well, I'm going to release this individual of a debt. They no longer owe me this. In other words, when I think of this individual again, I'm not going to think, well, they owe me something. I'm choosing to forgive. I'm choosing to relinquish the debt that they owe me. And then in the same sense, I'm actually setting myself up for success now, because now I can actually move on. I can be someone that overcomes, and I can be a better individual because of that. You don't necessarily forget. You're not saying, well, I'm going to forget this ever happened. I'm going to forget about this person. No, I'm just, every time I think about it, every time it comes up, I'm going to choose to keep forgiving. I don't think forgiveness is just a one-time thing. I think that many times it's actually something that should happen multiple times. Like whenever I feel like, wow, this person hurt me, I should immediately say, well, I'm choosing to forgive them again. I'm choosing to respond this way. Otherwise, we're just going to find ourselves back in bitterness and such.
Like Paul said, you have to die daily to your flesh. Well, your flesh doesn't want you to forgive people, so every time that comes up, that's another point that you have.
Because you're like, oh, I deserve, like this person hurt me, like they took something or whatever. I deserve justice. And that's where you, in another sense, you do have to give it to God. You have to say, well, God, you're the judge of all the earth, and you're going to right the wrongs. But in the moment, every time I think about the wrong that happened, every time I think about this person or whatever, I'm going to literally make a choice to forgive them or release the debt that they owe me, that I believe that they owe me, and I'm going to literally give it to you. I mean, it's trusting that God's big enough to work it out, and then believing that you can be an overcomer through it and be someone better than just someone who gets bitter because of it. So,
well, there's one reason why God takes things out of your life that he feels to be taken, and that's simply because it's not good for you. And if God doesn't think it's good for you, then he's going to remove it. And then for us to blame God about that or blame this other person, okay, we could, like, my dad, God didn't make my dad leave.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. But he also says that he'll be glorified in whatever situation, no matter what it is. So even though my dad sinned, that was all my dad.
Yeah, I
God's
mean,
still glorified out of it. And the reason
Mhm.
that he allows stuff like that is to bring you closer to him.
yeah, exactly.
So why would
Yeah.
you not fill that with
Right.
God?
What's the whole idea of free will? I mean, I feel like I say this every time, but like God created us with free will so that He could have the ultimate experience as a God or as a creator. You know, He created us so we could either choose to reject Him or accept Him. So it's the same thing with other people. It's like God allowed this in my life so that it could potentially bring maybe this other person closer to God, maybe me closer to God as well. Maybe this person will actually learn the lessons they need to learn as a result of God allowing this to happen. That's another thing.
And a lot of times it's just to help somebody else to be able to relate to someone and be like, hey, I
Yeah,
got
that
through
too.
that, and this is how I did it. You
Yeah,
know?
100%.
Yeah, like you never know what God will or how God will use you based on what you go through. And I'll say a couple of things too. I think to some degree, like we're not supposed to forget because that's what
Yeah,
keeps us
absolutely.
safe. Like
Yeah.
if you lived 1,000 years ago and you just every day you woke up forgetting what happened the day before, you would die. Like everyone would just die, would cease to exist. And the reason why is because you have to remember, oh, be careful. There's lions and tigers out there, and there's people trying to kill me, and there's
Gravity.
yeah, there's this thing called gravity, and don't jump off that cliff. You know, like I'm talking about people 1,000 years ago. In order to survive, you had to learn things the hard way and be like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. How do we learn from our mistakes so that we can survive as humanity, right? So that being said, to some degree, when it comes to the mind, there's emotional memory. So for example, you're in a conversation with somebody, they say something, and then you react because you've had this familiar conversation 50 times before with someone else. So your brain is trying to protect you from what could potentially happen based on maybe some things you went through. Does that make sense? So although that sounds nice, forgive and forget, I think part of us, like we're not supposed to forget
No,
things
yeah.
because that's what keeps us safe. So that being said, it's more just forgiving and being able to move on with your life and not, like what you
Yeah.
said, not holding on to that debt that
And-
person owes you in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So you can
Because
say
well, I was
something
just say, it, and what it does is it rots you out. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's what it does to you. The other person maybe like, oh wow, they forgave me and whatever, but they don't feel the pain that you feel. So you have to do something about that. And you don't want to
Yeah.
you don't want to live miserably, to just put it simply. So you want to live successful and happy and thriving. And so that's where I think forgiveness. I think it's just a constant choice to forgive.
Right.
Every single time I think about this person, man, I'm just going to choose to say no. I forgave them. I'm releasing them of the debt that they owe me. And eventually, it's going to be natural. It's not even. You're not going to think about it the same way. You're going to be fine.
So
And it's
like
hard,
that,
but-
it's like that process of moving on. Like, yeah, like sure you might remember it
Yeah,
forever,
it's something
but
that happened. It makes
doesn't-
you up, makes up who you are. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not something you forget.
It's a scar.
It's a scar, but I think that scars are
not gonna, like,
powerful.
affect you.
I think that it can affect you in a good way. Like you can help somebody now because of it. You can use that to, be
Yeah.
a blessing and maybe in the future. It just you never know. So
It's a very basic definition. Like that, something like that happening is an injury, but it's internal, it's emotional, it's
Yeah.
mental, it's not outward.
mhm.
But just because it heals, just because a cut heals, doesn't mean you don't see where it used to be.
yeah.
It just
Exactly, yeah.
becomes new. It goes,
You're like, oh, what happened? How did I break my arm? You don't
Yeah.
forget
You're not
about
gonna
it. You're
forget.
like, oh
Exactly.
shoot, I
And
remember
that's
that
the
day.
whole mindset behind the scar. And like
Yeah.
we
I know,
throw
I
that
can
term
hear it.
around, but
Yeah,
that's
I don't
genuinely,
think-
you don't forget it. It's
Yeah.
there to remind you what happened and how you got
Yeah.
through it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he said, how do I let go of the pain? And it's like, is the pain the memory of what happened, or is it the meaning that you're giving that thing that happened? Because there's what happens, and then there's what it all means, or like there's kind of what happens, there's the story that you tell yourself, and then there's the meaning that you give to whatever happened. So if you're not having the right perspective, which I'll get to in a second, you can really mess yourself up. So I'd say, how do I let go of the pain? I'll probably ask them, like, what pain, like exactly, like what are you referring to? Because it could be any one of those three categories that he's struggling with. So another thing would be perspective. I watched a video recently, clip from a psychologist. It was pretty interesting. He said he was talking to somebody that was talking about people that kind of left her life, and it's the type scenario where somebody left her life and like there was no reason why. Like she didn't do anything wrong, people just left her. And he said the reason that happened is because they have problems with them. I think there's a lot of times where if somebody doesn't want to be around us or they don't want to give us any time or they leave our life, like I feel like as human beings often we're like, what's wrong with me? Because they didn't want to be with me or spend time with me or anything like that. And so we often will blame ourselves, but I think more times than not, if somebody hurts you, for example, they have problems with them. I think it could apply to hurt people that are mean. So probably in this scenario, whoever he's talking about, he or she, they probably have a lot of things that
Sure.
they're going through, and there's probably a lot of issues that person's dealing with, probably more than what he is dealing with, and that's why they hurt him, and he's like so confused. So I think that's a good perspective to have, because the opposite is really dangerous. If you're like, every time that someone's mean or irritable or leaves me or something, I'm always going to blame myself. Like that's not good, because I think most of the time it could be you. Maybe you're an idiot, or you said something stupid, or you're just annoying, maybe. But as long as you're checking yourself and you have an understanding of how you're treating people, I think a lot of times you can decipher between, is there something I did or does this person just have issues with them and I need to kind of forgive them and then move on and let it go because it's not me. I didn't do anything. They just have issues with them.
You're not in control.
Yeah, it's something that might help any one of us be able to process hurt, pain, if somebody, mistreats you like this guy is talking
My
about.
sister needs